As I listened to the intro music, I had to chuckle because I've been tagged the medium's medium. And it's not because I'm the best medium in the world, it's because I teach other mediums. And today we have a medium that I esteem incredibly highly, and she's my teacher. Her name is Helen Davita, and I met her at Arthur Findlay College of Psychic Science. And I know that a lot of our listeners have been curious about the school because of my mentioning what a phenomenal experience I had at that institution. And before I get her to talk to you, I'm going to tell you that she is a truly accomplished trance medium. And trance is, well, I'll let her describe what that is exactly because it's one of her incredible fortes. But she's not just a trance medium. She also works with sound therapy. And our last two shows, we had two different sound therapists on. So that was interesting to continue someone who has that ability in this show. She's also an animal communicator, and she teaches, obviously, or I wouldn't have met her as an instructor. I just think I'd like to welcome Helen Davita. Welcome to the show, Helen.
Oh, thank you, Tracy. Hello, everyone.
Tell them anything else that you would like to have them know about you before we get started.
Well, I've been working with trance mediumship for many, many years now. And the more I work with it, the more interesting it becomes. I've just returned from a month-long tour of Australia, and we've been working a lot with trance mediumship there. And it's just so wonderful to see people make that connection. And
it was a wonderful experience. I didn't get to work with you personally in trance mediumship. You were assisting and working with the spirit art class that I took there. But for our listeners that are not familiar with what trance mediumship is, would you give them sort of a background and an explanation and teach us something here?
Yes, of course. Well, trance mediumship, I always call it the beautiful expression of mediumship. And the reason I call it the beautiful expression of mediumship is because it's a very pure essence. It's a very pure blending with spirit. And I find for myself that the true essence of spirit can come through in whichever form of trance they wish to express themselves. So it may be in wonderful philosophy, it may be loved ones from the spirit world who wish to talk to us through the trance mediumship. It could be an artist. It could be that the medium is to be used in trance as an artist. And of course, it could be in healing, and trance healing is a very great love of mine and does tremendous work I've discovered over the years.
Yes, I think some people may not even be familiar with the term trance. They may think, oh, is she talking about hypnosis? Is she talking about some weird zombie thing? Like how would you describe trance? I know it's an altered state, but how would you describe it for people that aren't familiar?
Yeah, it's definitely not a zombie thing.
Right.
That's probably the best description. It's not a zombie thing, but there are links with hypnosis and the history of trance mediumship. Well, it's very difficult to actually find the history because the trance state has been used by humans as far back as we can go in their ceremonies, and indigenous tribes now still use the trance state to work with for many different reasons. But in terms of modern trance mediumship, it did become quite popular through something known as mesmerism that was very popular in the 19th century, and it is the forerunner to modern hypnosis. And in that state of allowing the mind to become hypnotic or to become entranced, as I would call it now, you allow that capacity for the subconscious mind to be pushed aside and stop influencing the outcome. And it's very wonderful. Then you introduce the spirit world and they take over. And the big job is not to allow the the human subconscious mind to interfere in the process.
Yeah, I think of the differences between what we think of as hypnosis, where it's a very guided thing by another person, maybe telling or suggesting things that someone might see or think or feel, versus like that pure altered state or trance state where maybe in an exercise there might be some loose guidance given just in terms of setting the stage, but no suggestion as to how to proceed from there other than, basic things. And I know that there's a certain brainwave associated with it. Do you think of, I've talked in other episodes about theta and delta waves, and theta being that dream like state where we stay in touch with our subconscious, and delta being that deeper state where we might not even recall what we said or experienced. How would you relate those brain waves or that concept of free pure altered state or pure trance from suggested hypnosis, and how would you relate them to the brain waves too? What would you say?
Yeah, it's a big area, isn't it? Firstly, if I can just clarify, with the hypnotic state, in hypnotherapy, for example, and hypnosis, not stage hypnosis, that's another thing altogether. We're actually allowing that altered state of mind and consciousness so that we can access the human subconscious to do a job. So it might be to overcome a phobia, or to cope with an addiction, to overcome an addiction to something.
Like therapeutically, yes.
Yeah, therapeutically. So we actually need the subconscious mind, but we go into the altered state of consciousness, into this dreamy, lovely, perhaps a theta delta, or an alpha theta state to allow us to do that. And like, as you just mentioned, the power of suggestion would then come in. In the trance state, we're allowing ourselves to get into that state of consciousness so that we can bypass the accessing the subconscious mind and introduce another intelligence, and that other intelligence being someone from the spirit world, whether it's a teacher or a loved one or an artist or a healer, what we call a spirit doctor, the healers we call in trance healing generally. And so when it comes to the brain waves, it's relevant in the sense that we can commonly measure the brain waves and find common ground with a lot of trance mediums. But it doesn't mean that the spirit world is there just because the medium's brain has gone into a theta, delta, alpha, beta brainwave. We can do that anyway. And, we can find through meditation techniques and nothing to do with the spirit world. We can find ourselves in those brainwaves.
In a quiet brainwave state. Yes.
Yeah. So is it important? Well, for most people, you probably would register if they're in trance in one of a certain range of brainwave states. However, we tend to hear a lot about the trance brainwave state being the sort of alpha, theta, even touching into delta state of brainwaves. So the brainwaves become very slow, and compared to when we're alert and thinking a lot and very, very consciously minded. However, there are various groups who work in a very heightened brainwave state and work very consciously with, they call it trance. And there are some Tibetan monks who believe they go into trance and they connect to a divine source of inspiration for great wisdom and great teachings by getting into what we call a gamma brainwave state. And the gamma brainwave state is like at 40 hertz, whereas the alpha theta is between 4 and 7 in general. So you can see there's a massive difference in the brainwave activity, and yet both you could have trance mediums working in the theta state, and you could have trance mediums working in the gamma state, and the brainwaves are doing at the opposite end of the spectrum. So it's confusing.
Oh, no, it's very interesting. It's
Yeah.
very interesting to think that we could have heightened awareness at all levels of our being, perhaps. What, what, how would you differentiate the experience of the medium in, like the Tibetan, the gamma state versus the alpha theta state? How would you describe that?
From what I've read, and I haven't actually witnessed it for myself, it would be lovely to actually witness it. But from what I've read about this, they're in a state of bliss, the Tibetan monks, and it's this heightened state of brainwave activity, but this almost like a sense of nirvana for them, and then there's the trance phenomena that comes with it.
Is there any precursor to it? Like, I know that, and I've mentioned this also before in other shows, that you can access other worlds through things like hypnosis, drugs, alcohol, etc., but it may not keep you protected, and it's also sort of a violent way to access the other states of mind.
Definitely. And certainly I've heard that certainly where they're working in the gamma state, one of the most popular methods to achieve that is through chanting.
Yes. That's another. I've been reading up on C.W. Ledbetter lately, and he was talking about that you can focus on a mandala, or you can repeat a word like a mantra, or you can take drugs, alcohol, or whatever to get into that altered state, but it doesn't really progress your soul. Because, and I'm not saying the Tibetans aren't progressed. Oh my God, no. But
No,
I'm just saying, like, it doesn't really, unless you are able to go back and follow that path up to that frequency again, or that experiential realm where your subconscious is open and you're able to maintain contact with it. He asserts that it doesn't really benefit you, that it's through the quietude and meditation, contemplation, concentration kind of thing that does. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a very individual thing as well. Each medium is individual. In experiments where brain waves have been tested, there might be some common themes, but you do find there's always the exception. And I think that's testament to the fact that we are unique, and our brains and our anatomy of the brain is all different, as well as the anatomy of our consciousness, which is a whole nother area, I guess.
Absolutely. What was your first experience, or like what was, maybe your first experience, and what brought you forward to this love of trance mediumship?
Yeah, I mean, my first experience that I remember, I was about 15 years old, and I was working in the kitchens in a restaurant for some extra money while I was at school. And most of the staff had gone home. It was late at night, and I had one of those old cassette recorders that I used to put my music on every week. I'd record the top 40 chart songs and put it onto the old blank tape.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to play it while I was cleaning up and washing up and putting away the food in this restaurant kitchen. And one day I was being rather silly, and I started talking quite randomly while I pressed the record button, and I was putting on silly voices and making jokes, and I was just trying to amuse myself, really. And
it sounds familiar.
a very hot environment, and it was very boring. And then I'm not sure quite what happened, but I just had this awareness that oh, what am I doing? And then yes. So I turned off the tape recorder, finished up my work, went home, and then the next day got a phone call from somebody I worked with who'd put the tape on. And they'd come across me laughing and joking and saying silly things on this tape. And then what appeared to be my voice, but was slightly changed. And there was all this beautiful philosophy that apparently was being spoken, which was beyond my 15-year-old comprehension and appreciation at the time. And I have absolutely no knowledge of that. And it was definitely my vocal cords that were making the sound. But I have absolutely no memory of this wisdom and philosophy that spoke for about half an hour.
Wow.
And so that was probably my first big experience, apart from all my school reports saying I daydream too much.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it. It is stepping out and imagination and stepping into daydreaming. What a wonderful spontaneous occurrence. And how were you able to listen to the tape yourself after that too?
I did, and although I knew it was my voice, it was changed, and the content and the language was not my vocabulary.
Well,
And
that's when we know it's somebody else besides us, right?
yeah, and I had no memory of it. It was like I was hearing something new for the first time. So it definitely was a sense of another intelligence being there with me that just occurred spontaneously. I
Yeah.
actually gave the tape to my friend who I worked with because she loved it so much. But now, of course, I don't know where she is, and we're not in touch. And I wish I could hear it again, just out of curiosity.
Your debut, first recorded trance channeling. You know, for our listeners, some of you that have been with us a while, you know this, but there is quite a big difference between trance channeling, where you would be allowing a higher vibrational entity to speak through you, and possession, which is a hostile takeover of someone who has very poor psychic boundaries. Would you agree to that distinction?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, the whole channeling debate. I've never sort of had this possession side of it or worried about it. It
Oh,
hasn't.
no. Yeah, no.
But in terms of I've always wondered, what is this difference between channeling and trance? And I used to be asked this many times, and my glib answer was America. Where America, it's often called channeling, whereas in England we call it trance. And then I discovered that I was completely wrong on this. And
how would you differentiate trance work with channeling? How do you?
Yeah. I realized what was happening was it was just a different terminology that the American students I was meeting used for trance. But when I got into it more, I met some people who worked with angels and archangels and unicorns and all sorts of lovely, wonderful areas of inspiration for them, which I didn't understand anything about. And they talked about channeling.
Mm.
And so when I asked them, well, what is channeling to you? Because I thought it was just a different terminology depending on what side of the Atlantic you lived. And they said, oh, no, it's something completely different. You're going to the highest source and speaking from the highest source. And I would say, well, what do you mean the highest? Are you talking God here? And they'd say, well, no. And if they were angel people, they'd be inspired by their connection with their angels. Whereas for me, the trance was a separate intelligence, but perhaps one that had a greater knowledge and a greater closeness to our lives, or a knowledge of our lives in this world, rather than something more ethereal like the angels.
Do you recognize the source of that information now? Do you work with that being or collective as a guide, or how do you relate to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've never got into the whole angel channeling aspect, and you know, all respect to those who do, and I'm sure that's and what I've seen of the work that they do, there's some very beautiful times that they have, and some very wonderful philosophy. I tend to I think what's really happening with me is I'm working perhaps with a consciousness.
Yes.
It might be an aspect of a group consciousness, but it represents itself as a personality to me.
And do you have a name for that, or just you trust it will be there as you work?
Yeah, it depends how I'm working in trance. So if it's trance philosophy, it's generally a personality that I call Crane, which is a name that we've agreed. and I don't need to, and I don't want to know anything about Crane's life.
Yes.
I've done that in the past and realized that I've started to create the history and the story of the guide. So I asked for a new consciousness because I was creating it, and a Crane arrived, and we just decided mutually on a name to recognize each other with.
Mutual respect. Yes.
Yeah, that's it, really, Tracy. That's it.
Do you spell Crane with a K or a C?
Well, I think of it as a C.
Uh-huh.
But I keep trying to think I mustn't put an identity on this. I must think of it as an energy.
Yes. Well,
yeah.
do you think, or, I think probably so, that as we evolve and become higher and higher vibrational, that we become more and more, I don't want to say the same, but more and more like original source, or God, or however you
I hope
view
so.
that. Because it seems like the wisdom would be the same regardless of which mouthpiece it comes through, because truth is truth. But I think there maybe is a less concern for being more specific about the identity of the source as, I don't know how to say this, as like the being or entity or collective that's giving the information, may be less concerned with names and identity than we are, although that may be a vibrational thing because they are higher vibrational, so the need for more than a small identifier is not necessary, whereas maybe working with our guides and beings that are closer to us on the earth plane, having personalities, identities, stories is maybe more important, would you say?
Yeah, and I think you're right, Tracy. I mean, for me, I don't know whether it's necessary that it would be a higher vibrational intelligence, because I specifically try and avoid, almost like a human personality.
Oh, definitely. No, I'm not talking low vibration.
No, but I know what you mean.
Like,
Yeah.
and I kind of, maybe it's because I have it in my mind, kind of like, okay, we've got us, and then we've got like the spirits, and then we've got like the angels, and then we've got like the ascended masters somewhere up there, like I kind of, vibrationally feel a difference. It's not any of them low, well, maybe some, maybe
no,
spirits,
not low. I know what you mean. It's not low, but it's a very hard one to equate, really, because I haven't worked with the ascended masters in the angelic realm. That's not my field, but I've seen the beauty and the purity of the communication of those who say they're channeling from that level.
I maybe because of entrenched belief systems, people feel maybe more comfortable working with beings from those categories rather than being open to a wider array of possibilities. Do you think?
It could be, yes. And something makes me think of that's very interesting here is I've often heard it said by other trance mediums and teachers that the key to trance is that it is a superior intelligence working with the medium. And I'm not sure I agree with that, because I know when I've taught some students and they've gone into trance, sometimes for the first time, it's been someone who's come through with the most beautiful philosophy, but they've been they've had a very straightforward life, a very lack of education, very often couldn't read or write. We have, say we have Tom, who was the street cleaner in London, in the 1900s, and had no education, but the purity and wisdom of spirit that's come through has had the entire room of students in tears. It's been so powerful. So I don't think it's necessarily a superior intelligence, but it's a superior knowledge and a superior vibration that's working that way.
Do you think that because like we as physical beings are probably in one of the most dense states that we can possibly be in, and of course we have all our different bodies going up, our astral, etheric, it's mental, and all that going up. Do you think that that we ourselves can connect because we are more than we appear to be with those other parts of ourself, those other frequency vibrations where these consciousnesses and beings exist?
Oh, yeah.
And so maybe Tom is just showing himself as he appeared on Earth, but is, because he's out of body, more resonant with the higher, and I don't mean higher, superior, like better than, because we all have our struggles. We all work through things in life, and we're all on our path, and we're all made equally. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I know.
But in the sense of vibrationally speaking, like resonating at a, I don't know how to describe it. I always talk to people about like it's like a CAT scan where you have different segments, and your elementals and your totems and your guides and your angels and your spirit people and ancestors. They're all on different, and star people are all on a different like a different channel or a different frequency, I guess. And no pun intended. Yeah. What do you think about that? Do you think that they're sort of sorted by, not that there's a division per se, but sorted by vibration?
Yes. It's such a huge area, isn't it, of thought. It's so existential, but I do feel very much that we're working with our own consciousness. There are moments where we're speaking from the soul, and there are moments when we're talking from, if you like, the pain body within us, the part of us that's frustrated and all the bad experiences gone in, and it's going to depend where we are in our consciousness, where we can actually connect. So I do think we are quite
beautiful. Yeah.
I think we're quite capable as conscious beings and of conscious thought of actually going beyond what we would normally consider. And I expect we've all had moments where we've had this burst of creativity and we couldn't for the moment reckon or know where it had come from.
Yes.
And so I think, it's a tough call to say it is exactly this or it is exactly that. But there are moments when you slip into a different consciousness and a different creative thought pattern that perhaps aligns with another frequency, another intelligence. And it's in those moments where you realize, whoa, I'm more than this physical being. I'm more than this, flesh and eyeballs and bones and skin and all this kind of thing. And I think that's partly where that lies. We don't know where thought comes from. You can't actually say a thought originates in the brain. And I was talking to a neurologist about this fairly recently this year, and nobody knows where thought comes from. Nobody knows where consciousness comes from. We know there are parts of the human brain that you can stimulate to have memories or react in certain ways, but we don't know where it actually originates. So it's very possible that we have this separate consciousness, which is part of the soul, which is not, which is part of the whole spirit body connection. And, this is working at, if you like, for want of a better word, a different vibration to our normal human existence.
Yeah, I think of it like a continuum, because I think in the physical body, we're definitely experiencing separateness. So maybe we're obsessed with that. We're here at the bottom of the hour already, and we'll be back with trance medium Helen Davita when we return.
Reverend Tracey Lockwood.
Welcome back. If you missed the first half of the show and you'd like to connect with our guest, her name is Helen Davita, and you can find her at helendavita.com or you can go to Facebook and find her at Helen Davita Events. And if you'd like to catch up with me, my website is MEDIUMTraceyLockwood.com. I also offer readings and tutoring, private and otherwise. If you've missed one of our shows and you wish that you could hear it again or hear the rest of it or listen to something new, you can find them on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and put in Medium Tracey Lockwood. I would love it if you subscribed when you're there too. Helen, oh my goodness, we were deep in the ethers there.
We were
really talking profoundly about trance mediumship. Let me ask you, was there anything else that you wanted to add to that before we get on to the next question?
Yeah, sure. There's a very interesting discussion we were having about these consciousnesses and perhaps connecting and being able to connect through consciousness. Some would call it soul, perhaps. So it becomes more of a soul connection.
Yes.
Stripping away the physical and working with the pure mind and allowing the mind of an intelligence from beyond this world as we know it to blend with us. So what I wanted to add to that was the beauty of the trance is that harmony and blending with the pure spirit consciousness and allowing it to express itself. That's really what I wanted to add there.
Yeah, it is blissful. It really is. When I'm working like that, I don't do at this point. I'm not doing group present. I don't do any kind of demonstration mediumship. I prefer private reading and tutoring. That's just my thing. But when I'm in that state, there is no pain. And it's sort of like a feeling of coming home to me. When you're in that state and you're working in that state, have you ever do you have different physical experiences when you come back, like within your body? The reason I'm asking is I had one connection for a client who she was asking some very esoteric questions, like, is the one lonely, and is the void part of the one? And I don't even remember, because I was in that deeper state where you don't really remember that. And when I came back, I don't think I had been prepared, because I didn't plan to go that deep, high, out. I don't know. That I came back kind of wanky in my body, and I had tremendous vertigo. And as I went home, I kind of was trying to rush myself to ground, because I thought I perhaps had another client, although I knew she wasn't going to show up. She didn't, but I ended up like driving myself back home in a kind of weird state. I was walking toward my front door, and I sort of re-entered my body as I came up to my front door, and it felt so heavy and so toxic. And I had about 3.5 hours of disorientation and nausea after that. And I don't normally experience that, because I'm normally prepared for where I'm going. And a friend of mine was traveling through, and she said that she's clairvoyant as well. And she said that she had seen something when I came through the door, but she didn't know what she was looking at. And by the time I pulled myself together, she said that it looked like I had come partially back in my body, and that there were these tethers or strings that were all jumbled. And she said she had this impulse to go and straighten out the strings. What pops in mind when you hear that? And help us out here.
That's really interesting. And I expect sort of a physician or a neurologist would probably have a very different explanation to me. But at the end of the day, there's this duality, and there's this sense of separation of the mind or the soul or the consciousness from the physical body. And it sounds like you probably sort of had to come back to reality far too quickly.
Oh, yes.
Give yourself enough time to sort of readjust to being back into your conscious mind and your conscious physical body. And so it does sound like this duality, this dualist perspective of the mind and the body being the mind and the brain being particularly separate. And
Yes.
so that's a psychological term, the dualism of our nature, rather than we are the product of our brain and of our thinking, which comes from the brain, whereas we're separating the thinking and the consciousness from the brain and the human body. So it's a very interesting perspective. And as certainly when I've been doing exercises, some students are more sensitive than others. And as you do some exercises where you start to work towards the trance state, and some experience, perhaps because it's too fast for them, or perhaps just because of their sensitivity, perhaps a sense of nausea comes over them as well. So I know that going into the trance state, or going into the altered state of awareness, there can be some physiological effects as well as coming out of them, and possibly when that's recognized in a person, they're just someone who needs to take it a little bit slower, bringing that connection of their mind and body back together.
Yeah, that's what I had felt, that I just, we had an hour-ish to do our reading, and I didn't, normally I'm connecting with spirits or helping people with issues in their life, and I'm going to ask you the difference in a second between regular mediumship and trance medium reading. But, I think I did rush. It was easy for me to rush out. Like, it was so easy to leave and to get into that state. And it was fascinating. But coming back wasn't so fun. And I was rushing. I absolutely was rushing, because I was trying to force things back rather than allow a gentle return. Are there other things that occur for people? Like, what would you say is the greatest challenge for people that are developing their trance?
I think the greatest challenge is time, really, and there's a sense that this should happen fairly quickly, and actually it should be quite a slow process, a very beautiful blending and bonding of your own consciousness with the consciousness of the spirit who's working with you, with the spirit teacher. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is time.
Like, dedicating the time, or in my case, leaving not enough time to come out.
Actually, Tracey, it's both. So
yes.
Dedicating the time, it's not something, it can happen spontaneously, and that's quite often the start of it, like my 15-year-old self in a hot, sweaty kitchen, being very bored. But the actual time to develop that relationship and blending with those who will work with you and will be able to bring forth the phenomena of trance through you, if that's the way you're going to work, does take time and dedication. And even though I might have had a spontaneous event when I was 15, there was a lot of years in between before I was actually working with it, on a full-time basis. So yes. I think it's both time for yourself to work with the trance state. Some people are going in far too quickly.
Yes. I think that's dangerous in not a scary but serious way, because sort of like we were talking about the influence of artificial means of achieving trance state, rushing it would also not leave energetically, it seems to me, like a proper degree of focus on I'm not phrasing it well, but I can feel it, like having a darker energy or a lower vibrational thing happen, or ego get involved, or something.
Well, I agree with you, Tracey. I think probably the biggest hazards are that when someone wants it to happen quickly, and they're just desperately want it too quickly, and they go in too quickly, is they're still in touch with their subconscious mind, they're still in touch with their conscious mind. And unfortunately sometimes the ego, because you want it to be good and you want it to be right, that comes to the fore too much. And so it does need to be a process where we learn about removing the thought away from the consciousness and allowing another consciousness to blend with us. So yeah, unfortunately those things do come into it, but they're also part of the learning experience. And
Oh, yes.
you know, even now, if I'll give a trance demonstration to students when I'm working with them, then there'll be times when there'll be some questions and answers afterwards, and they'll mention something, and I'll be able to say, yes, at that point I was totally aware of that, and I heard that person ask that question to my guide. And then there'll be other things that I'm totally unaware of. It's this constant seesawing of consciousness and trying to separate from my own mind, that there's the battle going on so that the spirit can do their work.
Yes, yes, absolutely. If I could, I'd like to just ask you for a quick definition of trance healing, which I know is a huge arena. I may have to ask you after the show whether you'll come back or not. Talk about that in more depth, but just briefly, since I did bill it as that, how would you define trance healing? And then maybe we can go on with our exercise.
Yes, certainly. Well, certainly trance healing is probably one of the greatest expressions of the trance state. In fact, I would go to say it's the gold standard in my opinion.
Yes.
And because how the great benefit it can have. And for example, the basis of spiritual healing is there is this life force, this universal energy, and some people may call it God, and some people may call it source, and some people may call it the energy. It doesn't matter what you call it, but this life force that exists through everything throughout the universe and time, and that in itself is a great healer. And you can become a channel for that through the power of your intention, to channel, if you like, become this channel for this energy to flow to where you direct it to. And this is true of all spiritual healing disciplines, whether you call it Reiki or spiritual healing. And so you become this channel, this trance. This is channel for this life force. Now, if you take that into the trance state, what you're actually doing is you're also allowing your mind to get out of the way, and the blending with somebody in the spirit world, a teacher from the spirit world, who in trance terms is often called a spirit doctor. Mm-hmm. And their job is to direct and know how to work with that life force for the benefit of where it's intended to go. So that's the basis of trance healing. So
sort of stepping out of the way, like connecting higher vibrationally to your doctor guide or chemist or whatever we call them. I don't know. Is it the doctor teacher or is it?
The teacher in that case would be generally known as a spirit doctor. So many of the great healers of our time that we know of, like for example Harry Edwards, weren't great fanatics of trance healing because they thought, well, when you can connect to the source, why do you need to introduce somebody else when you can do it anyway? But I rationalize it with trance healing, that it's rather like, if your appendix bursts, you don't go to the GP, you want a surgeon quickly, so you go to the expert.
Yes. And also, if it were directly from source has to pass through different levels of expression to get to you because you're in the physical. So, it makes sense to me.
The other thing that I do want to say about trance healing in particular is that by allowing myself to, if you like, my mind to get out of the way, to be this channel for healing, then I believe I can be a better channel than if I just sit and want and wish and will that the healing energy flows to.
Right, not so passive. Yeah,
that works better for me. Yes,
yeah, that's interesting. Do you feel that we would have time for an exercise? We've got about 7 minutes now. Would you think that that's too compressed? Yes, yay, okay.
Yeah. I mean, we won't go into the trance speaking, but I think a trance healing exercise would be rather good. And but really, because of the amount of time, we can't sort of expect that anyone will go into trance, but we can certainly alter the state of consciousness towards trance with the intention that there's a wonderful sort of power that can work through us.
Thank you.
Yeah, so so long as whoever's listening to this isn't listening to this on the car radio while they're driving, and they're quite happy to find somewhere nice and comfortable to sit, and that they're going to feel very safe and be undisturbed by the phone or the door knocking, then I would start the exercise by just suggesting that first a person becomes aware of their breathing, and you become aware of the breath as you inhale through the airways and know and follow that pathway of the breath down into the lungs. And so it's just this lovely journey of the breath in through the airways into the lungs, back out of the lungs through the airways into the atmosphere, and this lovely sense of renewal and this air exchange feeding and invigorating the cells, every cell in your body, and just following the path of that breath. Just allow this for a few more moments. Now, I'd invite you to take that sense of breathing in and out down to the solar plexus. And so you have a sense that as you breathe in, you're inhaling from the bottom of your lungs up instead of from the top of your lungs down. And this is restoring the natural breath to our body. And so we're working on focus and a healthy breath. And I would like to suggest that you just close your eyes. Still breathing through the solar plexus. And relax any areas of tension you may be aware of. For example, around the eyes and the jaw, around the neck and the shoulders. Still breathing through the solar plexus with the eyes closed. And the eyes closed is important in trance. When you open the eyes, the light hits the retina and it wakes up the brainwaves, which makes you want to get more active with your thinking. When trying to move our mind into a state of no mind. When you find yourself with any thoughts arising, just acknowledge them and then focus on the stillness after you've acknowledged. And then go back to focusing on the breath and relaxing the body. So we're in this very light altered state at the moment, but we can begin to make that channel for healing. Many of the great healers, when you read about their lives, had a tremendous connection with nature. And it seemed as if they were able to connect to life force by their interest and joy of connecting with nature. So just imagine yourself for a moment being somewhere very beautiful within nature, somewhere where you can see the colours of nature. You can feel the breeze on your face. And you invite the life force within that, and the life force in all that creates and is beautiful within this universe, to be drawn into your own energy field, your aura. And with each breath through the solar plexus, that energy field is expanding. And you intend that that field reaches a person or an animal or a situation that you should wish to help with healing. And every time a thought arises, just acknowledge it and let it pass. Let it drift away and focus on the stillness, so that you can be the clearest channel that you can be. The further you can get away from thinking and just being in this stillness, the clearer the channel you can be for trance healing.
Thank you so much, Helen.
Thank you.
We're close to the end of the show, and for those of you that wish to reach Helen, you can find her at helendavita.com. And if you wish to reach me, it's MEDIUMTraceyLockwood.com. We'll look forward to meeting with you next week, seeing life again from a medium's perspective. I'd like you to remember it's never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing.